you have tuned in to Working on Wellness Radio Forum. My guest today is Tim Paschal. He is an author and an Olympic National Park volunteer. Tim says that he wants to help people understand how to prepare for and maintain their health before, during, and after hiking in the Olympic wilderness. Tim has spent most of his life in the beauty, wonderment, and as well as the challenges of this area in all seasons and conditions. He says, when I stepped into the forest, it gently began to change my outlook on many levels. I owe who I am and what I've become to the beauty, expanse, challenges, and hardship of these mountains. Welcome, Tim.
Glad to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. And you've written this book, and it is called Loop Hikes in the Olympic Mountains. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first, it took 141 years for somebody to write a book about loop hikes in the Olympic Mountains. They've had every opportunity, they just don't write the book that way. I didn't start out to write the book as loop hikes. I started to talk to my audience about the do's and don'ts. And don't push yourself too hard, and be proud for when you have met the challenges that the Olympic Mountains have. At the same time, sooner or later, as I began to fill out the book and so on and so forth, I noticed that there were several loop hikes that everybody talks about. The Ozette Triangle, for example, out on the coast. Everybody writes about that. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at a map and I'm going, oh, look at this. If you go up here and you go over there and you go around here, and you end up where you started. How many more of those are? I found 21 more of them. And they're in the book from the shortest, which is out at Crescent Lake, where you go up to Merrimack Falls. It's just under 2 miles, and it's a nice walk, and the trail is in good shape. The longest one in the book is 309 miles, and what it is pieces of these loops, and you just get out of this loop, into this one, out of that one, so on and so forth, until you finally end up where you started. I don't think anybody has ever hiked that loop. If they have, they've been very silent about it.
And how long would that take?
Well,
depending on your fitness level, but
okay.
Yeah, how long?
The way I wrote the book was, it's a narrative. I go hiking with you. I'm right by your side. I tell you when to get up in the morning and how tough the first half of the day is going to be. And along the way, I point out things like licorice fern, for example. If you know anything about that, the little ferns are about 6 inches long, and they grow in the moss that grows on the maple trees. No place else, just there. And if you pull one out, and run your fingers down to knock the dirt and dust off it, and put it in your mouth and bite down on the root. It's not sweet, but it tastes just like licorice, kind of a thing. Now, who else would know that? Tens of thousands of people marching right on by and not even knowing there's a licorice root just within reach.
Really? Well, tell us the connection between wellness and the Olympic Mountains.
There are two things. The Olympic Mountains, if you're a hiker, is a wonderful place to build your strength and increase your balance ability. If you're not a hiker, you might want to become one. There are a lot of people in my neighborhood who walk around and around on a daily business. They just show up, do their thing, go home, so on and so forth. And so what I've said to people is, start where you want to start. If you've never hiked in the Olympics, then I think starting in your neighborhood is a good place to do that. And the nice part about this is that it helps people strengthen their legs and improve their balance, which makes the world a lot safer for them as time goes on.
Do you suggest walking sticks for someone who's unsteady, or how do you?
I'm not a walking stick guy. However, I have used sticks in hiking,
Okay.
but not the ones that are manufactured. I have used sticks where I've come to a stream that crosses the trail, and I don't feel like getting my feet wet, kind of a thing. And so I look around. You got almost 1 million acres of sticks all over everywhere. You don't have to go too far to find one. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to bear your weight when you sort of pole vault across that, so on and so forth. And then I always put it down right by the stream so that somebody else can use it, or at least I can use it on the way back out. The sticks that are manufactured have steel pokers on the ends of them.
Right.
And using them to get across a stream certainly fits into my message. But using them just routinely as you go up the trails, every time you drive that thing into the trail, it begins to winter away the outer edges of the trail. And so instead of being relatively flat crosswise as you walk up them, they tend to be rolled on the outside, particularly if after the summer season the rains start and wash the edges of the trail away.
I see.
And that means that somebody has to walk up that trail with either both ankles on the outside of this because it's now domed, or one on the flat and one on the side. I don't think that it's a very good way to treat the trails.
How do you suggest people go about improving their strength and balance?
Oh, this one I really like. Wherever you start, whether you're walking around in your neighborhood or whether you're actually already hiking in the Olympic wilderness, what I'd want you to do is this. Go for your walk or your hike, okay? Mm-hmm. And take a watch. I want you to time how long you were out there doing this. And then what I want to do is ask this question: are you exhausted by the time you get out there and then come back? If the answer is no, then I'm going to say, okay, great, we have a good start here. Because what I want you to do the next time you walk that time set, I want you to add 5 or 10 minutes onto that. And when you get done, ask yourself the question, am I exhausted? No. Go on back to the car. Next time you come out, go that far and add another 5 or 10 until you get to the point where you say, yeah, I'm kind of bushed. Okay, great. That is the goal. That is the goal. So every time you go out, you walk for this far. And for some people, it can take a few weeks. For some people, it could take a couple of months. But once you are comfortable out there at that extended, it's time to add something more to that. The more you do it, the stronger you are, the better your balance is.
So let me ask you a question. The loop hike that you talked about, which was the shortest, is that one of the easier ones?
Actually, it is not, because you have to climb up about, I'm going to say, between 200 and 300 feet to get to the base of Merrimack Falls.
Okay.
The first part is relatively flat, and they're very wide and very well attended to. But you cross the bridge across Barnes Creek, and the next thing you do, you start climbing up. It's not difficult for most people. It is impassable for some.
Okay.
But my idea is you're enjoying being out in the wilderness. And there isn't any absolute requirement that you have to get someplace.
Right. And you might come across some licorice fern.
Licorice fern, right.
I just did not know that. How long will it take to improve my strength and balance?
Depends on how dedicated you are to your own program. Mm-hmm. You're talking about to yourself, not to me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've got my own program. But The fact of the matter is that if you commit yourself to that, you will get stronger in a relatively short period of time, and you'll begin to feel it. And then if you extend it and you're even better, you can look over your shoulder a year later and go, wow, that's what I used to do, and look what I do now. And I'm sort of tired of walking around the neighborhood. I think I might try one of those hikes in the wilderness.
You can meet your goals by walking in your neighborhood, but the trail makes it more enjoyable.
That's right. Or Carrie Blake Park, or Robin Hill Park, or walking all around town. I mean, it's whatever you choose.
What's the difference between my neighborhood and the Olympic mountain trails?
Well,
there's no licorice fern in your neighborhood.
Yeah, right. Somebody's going to lose in this, and it's going to be downtown Sequim. In this sense, there isn't anything more wonderful, more soothing, more pure joy than walking in to the Olympic wilderness. It is like having a Van Gogh hanging around every corner that you cross. It is just glorious. The birds come out and sing. The animals may cross your path, kind of a thing. If they do, by the way, stop. As soon as you see them, stop. The further away you are and the smaller they appear to you, you are less and less a threat. Therefore, they go on doing what they want, and they don't stick around in one spot very long either, kind of a thing.
What kind of animals?
Bears. There are, get this, about 350 bears, the last counting. I don't know how you count bears, because you can't be in all those places in 1 million acres all at once. But the parks has a system whereby they go out and figure out what this is. The bears are everywhere. Black bears don't hibernate. In the wintertime, they have these long sleeps. They might sleep for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they get up and they rummage around for food, and then they go back and go to sleep again, so on and so forth. They tend to move down into the lowlands. There's no reason to be up at Hurricane Ridge. There isn't anything to eat up there, kind of a thing. But everything, including cougars. Lots of cougars. However, I have to tell you, in the thousands of miles that I've hiked in the Olympics and 6 decades of hiking trails and backpacking and that sort of thing, I've never seen a cougar, never seen any kind of trace of a cougar. I know they've seen me. They just don't want to mess with me. Not because I'm mean, because they can go get a rabbit anytime they want one. Anytime. So why should I go wrestle with that big guy? Besides, he hasn't shaved today.
Should I do some of my training hikes in the rain? And how do I stay dry?
Again, it's your training hike, okay? And you've committed to it. And you're going to do this 5 days a week, not necessarily on the hiking trails 5 days a week, because it takes time to get to them, but around your neighborhood and that sort of thing. You've committed to that. Try to tell me that you can go through spring and summer and early fall and not run into the rain on one of your days. And here's one of the rules. You can't just look out the window and say, well, I'll wait until this afternoon. No, you won't, because it might be raining this afternoon too, and then you might put it off and one of your days go plonk. Right. 5 days.
No bad weather, just bad clothing.
That's right. And so what you need are a raincoat, rain pants, and waterproof hiking shoes, okay? Or boots, depends. I have a set of rain gear, a coat and pants, that I think I paid about $15 for it. I mean, it was the cheapest thing I could find in sight. And I thought, well, I'll try this out. If it works, fine. I can either go buy a bunch of those, or I'll go get something more sturdy. I have had them for years, and they still do exactly what I ask them to do, so on and so forth. Getting things doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. And particularly this time of year, when on Amazon or on the internet in general, they're trying to offload last year's goods on the shelves and get ready for this season. I saw a pair of women's hiking shoes, waterproof, done by Weber, which is a good shoe company, $19. $19. Then I looked at the new ones. Oh, you can get them for $115. That's the difference. And believe me, I don't care how cute your shoes are. I guarantee you, give it about a month and they will be gray, grubby brown. That's just what trails do to them.
And that's how you want them to look, so it looks like you're a professional.
Well, there you go.
You're listening to KSQM. It is 19 minutes past 2. I'm Olive Martini, and this is the Working on Wellness Radio Forum. And my guest today is Tim Paschal. He's an author, and he has written, I will get the name of the book right here, Loop Hikes in the Olympic Mountains. And we've been having such a good time talking about how beautiful this area is. Tim, tell us a little bit about hydration. Is it dangerous to drink water straight out of the river, a lake, or a stream?
Yes, hydration isn't dangerous. But drinking any water that you come to just about any place in the world, but let's restrict ourselves to the Olympic wilderness. If it's a stream, if it's a waterfall, if it's a lake, if it's just an ugly, dirty, wet pond kind of a thing, those are full of Giardia. Giardia is a bacteria that wasn't here in the 60s, early 70s. I'm not quite sure why it showed up, but it's here, and it's here to stay. And you can't see it. The size of it is half a micron. This makes the pinhead look like the Rocky Mountains. I mean, it's that much difference. What you need is a life straw. Life straws you can buy at Brown's Outdoor in Port Angeles down on Front Street, or sometimes they show up at Costco. Because it's Costco, you buy 4 at a time. Doesn't make any difference. You can put them on a shelf and they last forever.
What does it do?
Well, here's what it does. Let's take that really muddy, ugly pond that you found. It's the only water and you need water. You clip the bottom off of this, and you stick it in the water. You take this off, and you suck the water up. And when it gets to you, it isn't brown and ugly anymore, and it doesn't have Giardia in it, because that's all the filter effects that are in the middle of this. So, this Life Straw will protect you from getting Giardia. You could drink the muddy water or lousy water kind of a thing, and you wouldn't think anything about it. By the time you're home, you still feel good, so on and so forth. So, you can drink that water. Between 7 and 10 days, all of a sudden, your whole innards turn inside out. It is nasty stuff. Your doctor can cut it off fairly quickly, with a little bit of medicine kind of a thing. But it's not anything you want to go through. And it will show up. And they are all contaminated. The whole idea that if it's moving fast water, it's okay to drink, no, it isn't.
Okay, and this was called a Life Straw.
Life Straw.
Okay.
Okay.
What are the pros and cons of hiking in the mountain?
Well, one of the most wonderful things about hiking in the Olympic wilderness is it's the only one of its kind on the planet. No other place looks just like that. If you've been to other national parks all over the U.S. and in Canada, They have similarities, but each one is uniquely different from the next. The nice part about it is that it relaxes you. You are out there meeting a goal that you've set. So no one is, standing behind you with a whip and making you do this. You're not sad because you're out here, because you decided to come out here yourself. And you should be out there with somebody else.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because the cell service in the mountains can be very sketchy.
If you're up at Hurricane Ridge and you go over to the back side of the ridge where you can look down on Port Angeles and on Victoria, you can probably talk on your phone all day long. You can see the towers down there.
Yeah.
Like I said, about 80% of the Olympic National Forest and National Park is just dead when it comes to this. One of the things that I've always asked people to do is you should leave a note with your neighbor that says, oh, this is what I'm doing today, and this is about when I'm going to leave, and this is about when I'm going to get back, kind of a thing. If I don't come back, something terribly wrong has happened, and will you please notify the people that can help me out of where I'm at.
Now, you've been hiking for most of your life. Do you hike alone?
No.
Okay.
I've never hiked alone. For one reason, you can't be friendly with yourself, You can tell a joke, but it's nice when you hear somebody else laughing about it, kind of a thing. No, I've always been with somebody. I started out when I was 11, and I was with the Boy Scouts. But the Boy Scouts didn't go often enough, so about 6 or 7 of us in the Boy Scouts just sort of split off. We did all the Boy Scout stuff, but they only did something about once a month in the summertime. We decided that we would take the Olympic Mountaineer class at Olympic the junior college.
Okay.
It was that way in the 60s. We were too young to be in the class, but the guys that were teaching the class saw the brightness in our eyes. We really wanted to do this, and so they said, well, we can't sign you up to be in the class, but if you wanted to make a donation to the gear closet, then you could probably sit in and see what we're doing. We did, and we sat in the bus too, and the bus went, and we climbed. And pretty soon, we did our climbing ourselves. All in the winter, by the way, which was pretty exciting.
So tell us some of the cons of the Olympic Mountains.
Cons. One of the cons, I'm going to put my hat on.
Are mosquitoes.
Do you have one of these? They don't cost much, and they certainly aren't fancy.
So to see this, you're going to have to get on the website after this is on the air and see Tim's hat. It is a mosquito.
It's a mosquito hat.
A mosquito hat looks like a beekeeper's
Yes, I picked one in olive green so I would fit in with the forest myself. I suppose any color would do. I don't think the mosquitoes care. But there are a lot of mosquitoes in the late spring into early summer, and it isn't until the first frost in fall that they go away, kind of a thing. The other nasty part are deer flies.
Okay.
Deer flies land on your face, on the backs of your hands, on the back of your neck, I don't care where, and they take a bite out of you. I mean, you bleed after they have gotten lunch. And they come in swarms. They're about the size of bumblebees. You can hear them coming, kind of a thing.
That's a con.
At any rate, aside from this hat, which sometimes is in the way, everybody knows about mosquito spray. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
I have 2 things to say about mosquito spray. I don't like sprays that have DEET in them. I just don't do that. And I do like lemon eucalyptus oils that you can get for a fraction of the price that you pay for DEET. And get this, you can spray this on your hands or your legs or wherever it is. Sometimes I spray it in my hand and then rub it on my face, back of my ears, all the places that mosquitoes can get. And it's good for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at best, and then you do it all over again. A few dollars for this, about 3 times that amount for any kind of spray. DEET is a chemical that the U.S. Army delivered to us in the 40s to protect the GIs who were in northern Africa and just being eaten alive. We think that we got a mosquito problem here. Evidently, it doesn't come close to what they were in, so on and so forth. But those are things that you don't want to mess with.
A couple little nasty things going on up there in the mountain. Talk about, are there any poisonous snakes on the mountain?
There aren't any poisonous snakes.
That's good.
But I can point out one bush to you that you don't want to have anything to do with. You might as well treat it as though it's a snake.
Okay.
Go the other direction. And that is devil's club. If you've ever seen devil's club, it grows in the lowlands, not higher in the mountains. It has these large green leaves, about the size of a dinner plate or maybe even a bit bigger than that.
I'm going to put you on hold for just a second. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5 Sequim. That means it's 1:30. Go ahead. Or 2:30, sorry.
Oh, good. I'm glad for all of you out there that it is 2:30 because I could talk forever. When you walk up to this bush, it looks like it has brown, fuzzy, like feathers, if you will, on it.
Is it green with brown?
It's green leaves
Okay.
and brown stalks. Those
Okay.
brown stalks are covered with needles. Every one of them is a needle. And every needle is loaded with a chemical that will irritate your skin. If you grab hold of it, you're going to have a whole handful of this because their only job is to protect the plant by driving away whatever the critter is, even if it's two-legged.
That's a con.
And it has, in the late summer, it will have these big lobes of red berries on top. It's very colorful. But more than once, while I was just hiking down the trail and people wanting to go over the logs and go see what this is, and I cautioned them that you don't want to go over there. It's a painful experience.
Well, we don't want to scare you away from the mountain. There's a few things that you got to look out for. But beyond getting stronger and having greater balance on the mountain trails, what other wellness will I acquire?
The wellness comes to several things. One, you get stronger and you improve your balance, which makes you safer from falling down or stumbling down. But at the same time, you have set a goal for yourself. You've met a challenge. You can be proud about what you have done. And, you can expand that or leave it as it is, continue to do it, or give it up if that's what you choose to do. You're free to do that. And so there is this sort of mental kind of thing. When you're on your own, doing your own, it's kind of like eating your own sandwich that you made.
Let's talk about that. What can I eat on my hike?
Oh, you don't want to eat simple carbohydrates. Let me strike that a different way. Something with a lot of sugar in it.
Don't eat that.
Don't eat, just don't eat that. I'm going to give you a little relief at the end of this, but don't eat sugar candies and all of that kind of stuff. You will get a buzz out of that, And for the next, maybe 30, 45 minutes, you'll feel charged up and ready to go. And then it just flips on you and drains you. And you are in worse place than you were when you picked up the candy bar or the sugary thing to begin with. What you want are complex carbohydrates. These are nuts, seeds, dried fruit, peanuts, all of that sort of thing. And you can eat those along with water, and it will give you the lift that the other did, and it will stick with you. And when it is used up itself, it doesn't leave you in a hole.
This is the Working on Wellness Radio Forum, and my guest today is Tim Paschal. He has written a book on the Olympic Peninsula Mountains called Loop Hikes in the Olympic Mountains. And those loop hikes, basically what he's done is he's taken the time to give us a hike that you park your car, you do your hike, and you come right back to your car. And so that is the book that he's written. Let's talk about campfires. When you camp overnight, can you build a fire?
I hope not.
Okay, and tell me.
Fires are dangerous, really dangerous.
In the mountains.
If you remember last summer, we had, I think it was 7 fires. None of those were campfire fires. They were all lightning strikes. But you can see the damage that it does. Having a campfire is just asking for trouble. First, they have all kinds of smoke. You can't have a campfire above 3,500 feet of elevation. You pick up all the sticks that, if you left them alone, they rot down and fertilize the environment. That's what they're there for, kind of a thing, not to do marshmallows with. Besides, marshmallows are simple carbohydrates. I won't go back into that.
Talk about this piece of equipment that you brought today. It's called Jet Boil.
Jet Boil. It's a stove. All the parts to the stove stack one on top of one another, and the parts are in here. This is a liter worth of water, and I didn't bring the fuel container on the bottom of it, but you just screw this on to the fuel, and then there's a button that you push, and it strikes a spark to light this thing off, and it'll boil a liter worth of water in 6 or 7 minutes, and then you turn it off. You don't have to worry about anything catching on fire. You don't have to worry about getting enough water to pour on the thing because you're done with it, and so on and so forth. These things are not cheap. If you're interested in them, there are several different versions of this. Jet Boil is just one kind.
Okay.
But Brown's Outdoor, again in Port Angeles, on Front Street, carries all of that stuff. It's worth your while to stop in and talk to Ian or Eric or anybody else who's at the counter. They know what they're talking about.
Okay. What should I have in my first aid kit?
There are several things that you need to have in your first aid kit. Everybody will throw in a handful of Band-Aids. They're not going to save you, but the fact of the matter, it makes you feel better. The important things are 3. First, if you've ever known anything about moleskin, thank you very much. Moleskin, it comes in rectangles, has adhesive on one side of it. You take scissors, that's the second thing, you got to have scissors to cut them. If you've got a blister on your toe or at your heel or something like that, this is what you want to cut out and put on your foot. It's because if you've got that problem, it's about time to turn around and go back. Going back requires your feet. There's no flying home. There's no somebody coming and get you in a chariot. So you have to be as comfortable as you can. So those are the first 2. The third one is ace bandage. we've all seen ACE bandages. I suggest that you carry 2 of them at all times. They have that little metal clip after you've wound it around, right? Okay. They pop off. They always do, one way or the other. So along with the ACE bandages, you need adhesive tape. And usually it's because you have twisted your ankle, most often than not. So you take the ACE bandage and you wrap your ankle to give it some amount of support, and then you put, not on yourself, but on the ACE bandage, the adhesive at the bottom and the top, and you get just a little better break walking out of here to wherever it is that you need to go.
We talked earlier about cell phones in the mountains and how they won't work. Of course, you don't want to hike alone, but cell phones won't work.
Cell phones don't work in most cases. There are a few places that people get some amount of contact. But you're right. You always ought to have somebody hiking with you, because the chances of you both hurting yourself at the same time is unlikely.
And Tim, this week looks like a good day to hike, yeah?
Well, I
good
think
weather?
so, yeah. Finally, we get sunshine day after day after day, right? Instead of hour after hour.
Well,
Yes.
talk a little bit about stretching to prepare for your hike. And one of the things that Miss Penny said was that you don't necessarily have to hike. The mountains are beautiful. Just go and experience the beauty.
They are. They are gorgeous. And every one of them is different. Even if you only went just 10 minutes up a trail, you might as well be 1,000 miles away from all the busyness of, current living.
So stretch before,
Yes.
during, and after.
You need to make sure you get out of the car, or you've been in the house and you've been, washing dishes or watching the news or whatever you're doing, kind of a thing. You need to loosen up. Your body wants to be loose, and it wants to not be jammed into a particular position. So you do some stretching exercises. Some of those are arching your back, throwing your head back. It doesn't have to be, huge. Just stretch things out. You might hear a few popping and crackling. I do all the time. At any rate, then you go on the walk. Somewhere in the middle of the walk, it's time to, again, take a few minutes and stretch, straighten yourself out, get your core alignment lined up so that your whole head and body are over your hips like they're supposed to be, so on and so forth. And then at the end that you've done all of this, you might want to do some stretching. If you're on a sidewalk, find the next steel bar that holds up the street sign. Hold on to that so you don't fall down. Put one leg out in front of you, and then from your hips, not your back. You can't bend your back. You bend over and touch about your knee, and then slide your hand down your leg to the extent that you can. Don't bend your back. Count to 20. Count to 20 twice. Then stand up. Other leg. Count to 20 twice. Do that 3 times in a row. And now you've gotten rid of all the kinks of all this walking around and doing all these trails or sidewalks or whatever it is. Time to go home.
Is going down the mountain easier than going up?
No,
It's harder.
It's a lot harder, and here's
'Cause
the
you're
reason
tired,
why.
right?
If you are a hiker that hikes all the time, this probably makes no difference to you because you're strong as a horse. But most of the rest of us, stop and think about going upstairs. You put one foot up, and then you bring your other foot up, and that is a controlled action. On your way down, lots of people will get maybe 80% of the down step, and then they throw the rest of their weight on it. Ka-thump, ka-thump. There are rocks on the trails in the Olympic wilderness that are up to your knee. Just climbing up on one of those is tough enough. It's scary to stand on top of it and look that you have to step down into that. There's a lot of jarring on your ankles and your knees and your hips. I would much rather walk up and get a flight down.
Okay.
Life just doesn't work like that.
So what do I do about creeks that flow across a trail?
Well, early in the melt season, this can be a real big problem because the streams are fairly big and fairly deep. And if you have shoes or boots that are going to get you across dry, then you ought to proceed with that. If you are comfortable with it, maybe time to go get a stick to act as
Balance.
your balance going across that. On the other hand, later on, they are usually little dribbly guys, and they're usually not more than about an inch or two deep. And even if you walk through the deepest part, your hiking shoes, if they're waterproof, if you don't splash too much, will get you across to the other side.
How can I learn more about the Olympic Mountains?
Go online and put in Olympic Wilderness and all books, and all these books will show up. They are written in different categories, the history of the development of the Olympic Wilderness, the pioneers who came here and started farming and ranching and that sort of thing, the timber folks that were here and all the work that they did. And those families are still around.
So your book, Loop Hikes in the Olympic Mountains by Tim Paschal, and I'm going to spell that last name for you, Paschal. His book is available at Pacific Mist here in Sequim and also on Amazon.
Right.
And
at Port Booker News in
Port Angeles.
In Port Angeles.
All right. Well, as they say, the mountains are calling and I must go. Right?
That's true.
Thank you so much, Tim.